Joe, wonderful to meet you, sir. Thank you for taking a minute out today.
Thank you, Joe. Appreciate it.
You bet. So before we dive into your good work, I want to know this. 5 years ago, I know we probably don't want to talk about it anymore or think about it, the pandemic began.
Yeah.
And it really threw us into the unknown. And hopefully we've all come out stronger and better for it. But ultimately, how much of living through that time period has influenced and affected the way that you live life and do business in 2025?
Yeah, I would say it's affected me and a lot of my clients in a very significant way. Some of it's been positive, some of it's been negative, right? It hasn't all been bad. But, first off, a big shift is, we all got good with Zoom and remote work. Okay. And I think that's a very positive thing. I do a lot of work in the tech sector. And so my clients have been pushing these technologies for a long time, but it forced us all to embrace it. And I think that that's been very positive. The whole thing about remote work versus work in the office, that's still changing. It's still evolving. I don't think we've really figured it out. The pendulum swung from one end to the other. Like, we're all in the office now, we're not in the office, and people are trying to find the middle ground. So I still see that evolving, and I see advantages to both. So I think that that's been a big change for business. For me, a lot of the work that I do is driving sales, helping my customers be more effective in front of their customers, right? Sales strategy, sales execution. And in a virtual selling environment, it's very different. So that's been a big change. And for me personally, I do a lot of coaching and training and even in-field work for my clients, and that's shifted a lot. So I think there has been a lot of change, and we're still figuring it out. The dust hasn't settled.
You're totally right. And I think about how magnanimous that time was. And it undulated. It was like we were all clamped down, and then we were like, oh, it's okay. And then we all went back in when a variant came out. And it was like this big blurry blob of wax from a candle that just burned and burned. And we were trying to figure out what year was what layer. It was wild.
It was wild. And I think people were trying to get back to normal. And what they finally realized is there is no going back. We have to figure out how to go forward. And it's going to be different. And some will be better and some will be worse. But, that's been the challenge, is really figuring out, how do I go forward most effectively?
I think
Yeah.
it was it was a social and emotional rapture. I think a lot of us went through this very weird time where everything about what we were living through changed. Everything that was a part of our society. And it wasn't just like one or two things, and it wasn't just one country. It was the whole planet. And sometimes I feel like we did go through kind of a biblical rapture moment where it's like we're all here, we had decisions to make. We've all had to like be stronger, and hopefully that will just bode us well as we go into the future.
Yeah, I think so. It definitely was a transformative moment in my life, and really for everybody I know, and we still talk about it. And this is a little bit off subject, but I do a lot of work in generational theory, and the generations are fascinating to study. And one of the things that makes a generation are critical events that happen during formative years. So, for example, when you look at the baby boomers, you can say, okay, it was Vietnam, it was the assassinations of Kennedy and Luther and Martin Luther King and all of that stuff, right? Those were big events. Well, 9/11 was a big event that was that had a real impact. And when you look at COVID, it really impacted the millennial generation more than any other generation because it was formative years for them. And so we're going to still see how that impacts that generation going forward. The dust hasn't settled on all of this, but it was a global phenomenon like I've never seen in my life. It was, and I hope to never see another one.
Yeah.
But yeah, it was a big deal. Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's still impacting us.
Absolutely. So let's get to the heart and soul of what you do on a daily basis. I'm going to put you in front of a bunch of grade school kids. It's career day. Let's say they're fifth, sixth graders, and the kid in the back of the room that's curious is like, hey, what do you do for a living? How do you answer them?
Oh my God, I'd love to say I'm a firefighter or something really exciting like that, right? Because that's what they want to hear.
Yeah.
What I would say is I help people achieve their business goals. And my real focus is helping them achieve things around revenue, because that's the bulk of the work that I do.
Yeah.
And most companies, well, here's the reality, right? No business can succeed without revenue. In fact, the IRS will say if you're not making money, it's not a business, it's a hobby. right? So every business has to figure out how to generate revenue, and the way they do that fundamentally is they try and offer something to the market that the market wants and is willing to pay for. It's that simple. So the definition is pretty straightforward, but the execution of it can be very challenging. How do I differentiate? How do I get people excited? How do I build trust? How do I build referrals? All those sorts of things. And so the work that I do is really with companies that are business to business. It's not consumer based stuff. I don't help Amazon. Okay. I help companies that have a sales force that are selling to other businesses, that are really trying to figure out how can I help my customer. That's what I do.
So let me ask you this. What did you want to be when you were that kid in the back of the room at career day?
Oh, the firefighter. I'm not gonna lie. Yeah, I wanted to do something. At that age, I wanted to do something that I could relate to. That I had seen in life, and I had never been exposed to business, so that wasn't really on my radar. But the concept is still the same. I wanted to help people. I really have always wanted to help people. So I think that element of what I wanted to do has lived on, and I do that today as a coach, as a consultant, as a trainer, as someone who actually goes in the field with my clients and helps them do the work. Like I literally make sales calls for some of my clients to, be in the field and support them. So in that regard, I do still think that, I'm helping someone achieve what they're trying to do. Maybe it's not running out of a burning building,
Right.
it is, helping them do something that's really important for them.
So
Yeah.
take me back to where you were born and raised. How did this sense of sales and being a consultant and an author, how did all of these things evolve and fuse into who you were? What were the foundational seeds that were planted in you?
I'm really glad you're asking that question. It doesn't get asked to me too often, but I'll try and compress that story. But really, I think my mom and dad gave me great exposure to business. My dad ran a small office furniture and office supply business, a lot like Staples. If you think about what Staples is today, he had an independent version of that. And so I grew up in that business and I got great exposure to running a business, the good, the bad, and the ugly, satisfying customers, taking care of mistakes when they occur, generating sales. So that was really a great exposure for me. And honestly, I had a realization not that long ago that I'm kind of a serial entrepreneur because, when I was 5 years old, I went around the neighborhood asking people if I could collect their newspapers at the end of the week. And I piled them up in the garage. And then we loaded them in the car and took them to the recycling center. And, the bumper of the car would be scraping down the road and I'd get like 25 cents. My dad was really teaching me. He did all the work. I was a little kid, but he was teaching me about business. And then I had a paper route, a delivery, paper route back when there was a regular newspaper. And when I was a kid after that, I started installing car stereos. And I was always doing something, always working. In college, I was a DJ and I DJ'd for parties and things like that. And, there was always something going on where I was trying to make some money and figure out, how I could, deliver something to customers. And then, when I got in my career, I pretty shortly started a consulting company. By the time I was 26 years old, I had 13 employees and we were doing telecommunications and IT consulting. And I've had 3 or 4 businesses in that genre. I've worked for a bunch of people to gain experience. I did something interesting. After starting my business and running it for 10 years, I thought, you know what, I need more experience. And so I promoted one of my managers to run that business and I left it. I owned it, but I left it and I went and started working for other people because I wanted more experience that I couldn't get on my own. And then I went back to my business. And so it's been an interesting journey, but I think that, the story that I would tell is I've kind of been exposed to business from when I was little and always trying to figure it out.
I've been in IT my whole life, and that's interesting because that is that's kind of what Jobs did. I remember at one point when he sold his company and moved on, there's this level of evolution that you have to do in IT because it moves so fast. And there's
Yeah.
so many different facets of it. I mean, like think about now when you talk about generations and where we're all at, like, you know, we're kind of in a generation where we saw the beginnings of like the modem and computers, right? On the
Yep.
home market. And
We
now
did.
we're in AI and things that are
That's
thinking
right.
for us. And Arthur C. Clarke's shadow is looming large over our existence. It's such a strange compendium to like look at how things have changed and getting back to what you were talking about, to keep up with that and to be a good entrepreneur and to be a good business owner and to know what you're talking about because you have employees. It's very essential to have real world training. You can't get that in the classroom. You can't get MCSE certified and know exactly what's going on out in the real world.
No, I mean, listen, there's no substitute for experience. Never has been, never will be, right? And technology is fantastic. And when I started out in technology, it was very narrowly focused, right? But today, every business uses technology in a wide range of fashions, and they need to really understand it. But it still is an enabler, right? It helps you achieve your goals. It's very strategic and very important, but it can't do the job for you. And AI isn't going to do the job either. AI is still a tool that enables and supports and helps people achieve their goals. And so I think, although technology has become, woven into the fabric of society today, to me, it levels the playing field, and people still are the differentiator. To me, people are still the differentiator. And you can look at a whole bunch of companies that have the same technology, but they deliver a different experience. I
Yeah.
mean, what does that tell you? It tells you people still matter. They matter a lot. Trust matters, relationships matter, customer service matters, innovation matters, efficiency matters. All those things are people driven. They're using tools to achieve them. But, that's still the human element. And I'm a big believer in how can we use technology to enhance the human experience? That's how you win. That's how you differentiate.
Yeah. No, I totally get it. So let me ask you this. As someone that's obviously been very successful and highly driven in your career, who has been that inspirational force, that bedrock heroic figure for you?
Well, there's been a lot. I'm such a believer in the pay it forward because all my life I've had mentors and people I've looked up to that I've learned so much from. And, really, it's hard to pay those people back. I've stopped trying. I just try and pay it forward. And so, I could list people like Steve Jobs because honestly, he's always been an inspiration to me because I got into the industry when Apple was a very young company and he was running it, and I saw the birth of the Macintosh, which was, groundbreaking because no computer was like it other than the Lisa, which was also developed by Apple. So yeah, I can go back and rattle off some really iconic people like that. But what I would say, instead of providing that list, is that for me, it's been a journey of seeking out mentors and trying to be a student, and learning, and then going to these people when I've made mistakes and say, hey, this is what I did, help me through it. What do I do next? How can I learn from it? And what I would say to anybody is, failure is a great teacher. Fail fast, fail often, but learn, but learn and seek out mentors and seek out people, in your field, that are your age, that are older, that are in different industries, really be a student throughout your career and always be, growing. And I'll just add one other thing there. There's a great story in my book that I talk about where there's these two people in a class that I'm teaching, and one's like a know-it-all, and this guy knows everything, and the other guy's super curious, and he's always asking questions. And at the end of the session, my customer says it to me, those two people. I'm like, yeah, I know them well. They were both really participative, but one was disruptive and one was curious. And what my customer said to me is the disruptive guy is a C-level player. He's barely hanging on in his job. He's not doing well. And this is the guy who's the know-it-all, and he's got nothing to learn. And probably if he could just let his ego down and open up, he'd be a great student, but he's not open to learning. And as a result, he's being held back in his own success. The other guy that was asking all the questions was an 11-time President Club winner, a top producer. And so I went after that guy and I interviewed him. And I said, what's your deal? Like, how is it that, you're always, achieving? And he's like, I'm always learning. I'm always changing. I'm always evolving. Like he said to me, he said, your class was great because you shared some new things and I'm going to adopt some of those things. And he'll share and learn new things from the next person, the next person, the next person. It wasn't like I was so great. It was that he was a great student. He was always willing to learn. And I think that's the key.
You know, the best boss that I ever had, one of the best bosses I ever had, I remember I walked in to the room for my first interview, and there was all these people. It was in education, so there was principals and administrators and all these people, and the IT director was across the room, and I will never forget him saying that the top two criteria for what he's hiring, above and beyond certifications and diplomas and all of that, is a positive attitude and a willingness to learn. Top two. I'll
You
never
better believe.
forget that, you know?
Yep.
And
You
and
better,
and
you better believe it. Hire on character. Skills can be taught. Character, that's different.
right.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's right.
It
Yep.
it was huge. So speaking of, ideal leaders and people that exist, especially in the entrepreneurial world, if you could meet an entrepreneur that's alive today that you admire and look up to for what they're doing, spend some time with them, ask some questions that might help you on your journey, who would you love to meet?
I'd love to meet Obama. That's probably political, and today political is very risky. But I think he's a great thinker. He's a super intellect. He's got great perspective. He's had a very interesting journey. That would be honestly that would be a thrill for me. Here's a wild card for you. I'd love to meet Bruce Springsteen.
Yeah.
Um, Okay. Very different than Obama in so many ways, but the guys had such a journey, and I want to learn from that. I want to learn, about people's lives and the obstacles that they faced and how they overcame them and what are their founding beliefs. And I want to see their character in action and be inspired by that. Um, so I think that people that I would like to meet are not just business people. Yeah, sure, there's some amazing business people, that are still alive that I would love, to have conversations with. But I think my view is a little broader than that. And I want to meet people that have struggled.
Yeah.
Because that's really where the lessons come in and where the inspiration comes in when people come an obstacle. That's very inspiring to me. When I watch TV and movies, I'm always looking for an inspiring story, someone that's really overcome a challenge, because I think that that's life. It's not, and we're all going to have challenges. The real question is how do we deal with them?
Yeah, if you get that dream ticket, I would join you. I would love to meet Obama. I would love to meet Springsteen. They actually had a podcast together. I don't know if you saw that they
Yeah,
hired.
I did. Yeah,
Yeah.
it
And
was pretty amazing.
yeah. And I listened to Michelle Obama's book, and I was just it was so weird about how she described Obama in the early days when they met, how much of that exists and how all of the fabrics and all of the threads that completely have grown into who he is. And it's astonishing to think about how non-chaotic, how non-dramatic, and how effective he was as a diplomat and as a human being that really brought leadership into this world. When you
Yeah,
contrast that with the fear and all of the things that we're living through right now to what he did, like I remember when I was a kid and the shuttle the Challenger exploded. I was a
Challenger.
kid
Yep, yep.
and it was such a big deal, and we were all in such disarray. And for all of the hullabaloo that's been talked about Reagan throughout the years post presidency, he still got in front of that podium that night and was talking that eloquent speech about the shuttle kissing the face of God going into the space and doing all of this. And as a kid, I remember how calm I was, and I missed that from leadership. For them
That's
to walk
leadership.
into the yeah, and make you feel good about being alive, not only in this country, but on this planet as a human race.
Well, something that's really fascinating to me is, I'll talk about the US politics just for a moment, but from a generic perspective. When people think about voting for the president, a lot of times they think about issues like, the economy, the price of oil, a whole bunch of issues, right? There's issues, and that's not a bad thing. Okay. But in reality, Congress has more influence over those issues than the president does. What a lot of people miss is the president's role as a leader domestically and as a leader internationally. And I'm fascinated by leadership of all walks of life. I mean, mostly business because that's my genre. But leadership is such an important thing because it provides focus and direction, and it immobilizes people,
Yeah.
right? Good or bad, it mobilizes people. And what I would say is that, we get a chance as students to look at different presidents of the United States and look at their role as a leader and look at their influence on people, not their ability to pass laws or, to appoint, Supreme Court justices, but their ability to be a leader and its impact. And I think that's a fascinating thing to study. And I won't compare or contrast because I'm not going to be too political here, but
Yep.
there is definitely a big difference in leadership styles between different presidents.
Yep.
And I would love people to look at their influence as a leader because I think it's profound and often overlooked.
Yep.
Um, and that's something that really fascinates me. And I'll tell a quick story. When I was a kid, Lee Iacocca, came in to become the CEO of Chrysler Corporation when it was on the verge of bankruptcy,
Yep.
and he had like 90 days to bail out the company. And I said to my father, I said, Dad, how can one guy make a difference? Like, there's 300,000 employees. What's he going to do? And my dad said, if he's effective as a leader, he will unify that entire company in a direction. And he actually did it, and I watched this and it blew my mind. I was a kid and I was like, wow, that's real leadership. And it's an old story, a very old story, but it's a great example of how one person can influence an entire company. And I'll give you one other to take a look at. And it's heartbreaking to me because I'm an inactive private pilot. But the Boeing Corporation has gone from great to garbage because of a change in leadership. And there's a great documentary on Netflix about what happened to the 737 Max,
Yep.
but it's really the story of what happened to the culture of Boeing, and that culture was destroyed by a change of leadership.
Yep.
And this is important to me because this is how companies succeed and fail, is at the leadership level. And that's a lot of what my book is about. It's called Leadership Selling, but it's really about how leaders drive organizations, and from a selling perspective, but also from other perspectives.
Yeah, my dad was a car salesman and he didn't read a lot, but he always had that Lee Iacocca book on the table. And that
Mhm.
was a big inspiration. And it's astonishing to think about how there were people that would come in and totally clean it up, you
Clean
know?
it up. Yeah. And,
Like,
and Lee Iacocca's quote was, lead follower, get out of the way.
yeah, that's it. That's it.
Yeah.
I think about Joe Clark and Stand By Me, how he walked into that room with that baseball bat and said, "Let's go."
Yeah.
And it
That's
all
great.
changed, you know? So,
Yeah.
how have you over the years balanced this life of being a successful businessman, lots going on, taking and shouldering a lot, but also being a guy that has a soul and a life and pursuits on your own? How have you balanced all of that? What's your motivation to do it at the highest quality every day?
Isn't that interesting that you asked that question? First off, I've been really lucky and I'm very grateful and humble. I've had a good career. I've had a very good career. I wound up getting, in the right industry at the right time, meeting the right people, and I've wound up working with a lot of, large companies and mid-sized companies. And so as a result of that, I got to be kind of selective, not arrogant, but I could go for the good fit. Which companies, are a good fit for me and I'm a good fit for them. And, when you're able to find that good fit, you're able to be successful and do great work and not have to sell your soul. And that's a fantastic thing. And for me, family was always really important. In my personal life, there were some things that happened that required me to shift my career a little bit to make more time for, my family. And that was a hardship that turned out to be the greatest blessing of my life because I was forced to have work life balance, and I put my family first, and I'm very glad I did. And it caused me to be really selective and careful about the clients that I worked with so that I could do great work and achieve their goals and not have it consume all my time. Um, and so I learned a lot from that. I learned that there is a balance there, and you can do both. But a lot of it is about a good fit, because when it isn't a good fit, it's a disaster, right? You're working too hard to satisfy the client, and it's taken all your time and energy, and you're out of your sweet spot. You're out on the fringe, and you're struggling to do it. And so for me, really, what I say to my clients all the time is, if you've got a good pipeline, if you really have a good pipeline, you get to chase the business that you're great at delivering. And then you're poised to win it because you're so good at it.
Yep.
And when you get that fit, a lot of great things happen. And when you don't get that fit, it's just a struggle. Like you win an RFP, you win it at low margin, you don't have a great relationship with the client because it was really based on a bid specification. Now you got to deliver it. There's different expectations, there's low margin, there's lack of trust. It's a nightmare.
Yeah.
It's a total nightmare. And so a lot of what I try and do is I help my clients, you know, build those good relationships where both parties are thriving. And it comes from having a good pipeline. It comes from, being clear about who you are and who you're not and what you're good at and what you're not, and going after those clients that need that. It makes a huge difference.
Absolutely. Well, it's like the Boeing story. So
Yeah.
let me ask you this. Let's say you walk into a room and it's full of everybody that's been clients or colleagues or employees of you throughout the years that knows you as Business Joe. And you can
Okay.
walk up to a podium and tell them one fun thing about you, one fun story that will humanize them, humanize you, I should say, in a way that they wouldn't know. What would you tell them?
Well, I would probably tell them a theme similar to what I just shared with you. I would tell them a story about when I went after business and it was terrible, because I've done that. I've made that mistake, right? I mean, I've gone after business and I won it, and then I had the, oh my God, what am I going to do now? Like I actually won this thing, and now I got to deliver it, and I struggled. I struggled, and quite honestly, client didn't really have the best Joe Candido experience, right? And I would tell that story and say, I blew it. Yeah, I got through it, but it was a disaster. And don't do that. Experience is a great teacher, but learning from other people's experience is great too. Because it's a lot less painful. And so I think I would go down that road. And when I was young in my career, we really struggled. My company, I had those 13 employees, and we struggled every single month to make a profit. And a lot of it is because we didn't have a good fit with our clients. We sold things to people that said yes and never stopped to think about, is this a good fit? Can we do successful business? Is there trust? Do they have the budget to, for us to be successful? And, I didn't ask the right questions. And as a result, we did mediocre business, or we did great business but got paid at a mediocre level. Neither one was, desirable. And so, for me, the big shift was having the courage to say no to business. And what happened is I had a mentor who looked at my business and said, "You need to flush half your clients. They're killing you. They're literally killing you. They're sucking the life out of you, and you just need to dump them." I'm like, "But if I dump them, I won't have enough money." It's like, well, you're going to have to figure that out. You're going to have to figure out how to go after clients that, that value what you do, and you can be successful for them and they can be successful for you. And that was the big shift for me. I mean, that was honestly the big changing point. And I built after that my sales consultancy around that experience. That was actually a big fork in the road that changed the direction of my career. I used to work 80, 90 hours a week. I had no balance in my life. And if I didn't make that change, I would probably be burnt out and unemployed today.
Yeah.
Just be, wrung out. But that was a big shift.
Yeah. So, Joe, at the end of the day, everyone has a perception of you, family, friends, clients, everyone that gets your book, everyone that knows you. But ultimately, you run the show. What's your perception of you? Who do you think you are?
Who do I think I am? Who I hope I am is a person that genuinely wants to help others and has some skills in certain areas to achieve that. And today, I'm really careful who I target because I know if there's a good fit, we can be super successful. And I've got the maturity and the experience to say no to people. But my goal, honestly, my philosophy is when I take care of other people, I'll get taken care of.
Yeah.
And that's actually a lot of leadership selling is stop selling your products, stop pitching, stop all that nonsense. No one gives a crap about that. Really learn about their business and figure out honestly if you can help them achieve their goals.
Yeah.
And if you can help them achieve their goals, you're going to be in a great place to be rewarded.
Yeah.
And that's my basic philosophy.
So, what's the best thing about living in Vermont?
Oh my God, living in Vermont is great because, people are lovely here. They're honest and they're open and they're trusting. And it's a great culture. There's beautiful people here. Yeah.
I love it. So if anyone wants to get your book, they want to hire you, any of the good business, they have questions, reaching out, how do they do that?
Go to leadership-selling.com. That'll give you information about the book. It's got links to my website. It's got information about me. Just reach out. No commitment. I'm super transparent. If you want to chat, I'm happy to chat, and we'll figure out if there's a fit.
I love it. Joe, this has been wonderful. It's been an honor and a pleasure. Thank you, sir.
Thanks, Joe. You've been great.
Thank you.
Hello, friends. Joe Dimino here. I just wanted to let you know that after 30 years or so, I have finally released my first book of poetry through the mighty Spartan Press here in Kansas City, Missouri. As the creator and host of both Neon Jazz Radio and the Famous Interviews with Joe Dimino podcast, along with being a visual artist, I'm ready to embark on a new adventure and want you to be a part of it. You can get a copy online via Barnes & Noble, Amazon, and actually on the streets in Kansas City at the great Prospero's bookstore off 39th Street. You can also visit joedimino.com for links to the book, to more poetry, and everything in my world, including paintings. Thanks for all of the love and support over the years, and please dig the words.